Picture this: a vibrant island democracy at the crossroads of history, technology, and global geopolitics. A place where the future of freedom in Asia, the very heart of the world's tech industry, and the stability of entire supply chains hang in the balance. Welcome to Taiwan in the year 2024, where the specter of conflict with China isn't just a distant thunderhead, it's the daily reality, an ever-present question mark shaping the news, the markets, and the very strategies of nations across the Pacific and beyond. But why does this standoff matter so much? Why do analysts, governments, and CEOs alike watch Taiwan with such anxiety? The answer is simple, yet profound. What happens here could rewrite the rules of technology, economics, and even the meaning of democracy for the 21st century. Let's rewind for a moment to understand how we arrived at this pivotal moment. The story begins in the aftermath of the Chinese Civil War, which ended in the year 1949. As communist forces seized control of the mainland, the defeated nationalists retreated to Taiwan. On the mainland, the Communist Party established the People's Republic of China, while Taiwan became the last stronghold of the Republic of China government. From that moment on, two competing visions of China emerged. One on the vast Asian mainland, and one on an island just off its coast. Beijing has, ever since, insisted that Taiwan is a breakaway province, an unfinished chapter in the story of Chinese unity that must be closed, by negotiation if possible, or by force if necessary. In contrast, Taiwan evolved into a thriving, pluralistic democracy, with its own institutions, president, and constitution. The people of Taiwan, over generations, forged a distinct identity, one that is increasingly separate from that of the mainland. This geopolitical puzzle is further complicated by the so-called One China policy. Nearly every country on Earth, including economic powerhouses like the United States, the United Kingdom, Japan, and Germany, officially recognizes Beijing as the sole legal government of China. Yet, in a delicate diplomatic dance, many of these same nations maintain unofficial, yet robust, relations with Taiwan. The United States, for example, provides arms and security assurances to Taiwan under the Taiwan Relations Act, but stops short of offering an explicit defense guarantee. This gives Taiwan a measure of support, enough to deter some risks, but never enough to provide certainty. Throughout the Cold War and into the new millennium, cross-strait relations have swung between tense military standoffs and periods of cautious economic cooperation. Sometimes, new leaders on either side have brought hope for peace. At other times, fresh provocations have driven the rivals to the brink. These swings have always been influenced by broader global strategies, shifting alliances, and the relentless march of technology. Under the leadership of Xi Jinping, Beijing's posture has grown increasingly assertive and nationalistic. China's ambitions are now crystal clear. Reunification with Taiwan is not just a long-term goal, but a foundational pillar of Xi's China dream. To this end, the People's Liberation Army is pouring countless billions of US dollars into modernizing its forces, especially its rocket and missile arsenal, cyber warfare divisions, and naval capabilities. Chinese warplanes now buzz the edges of Taiwan's air defense identification zone almost daily, a frequency that was unthinkable just a decade ago. Each incursion sends a chilling message. Beijing is both willing and able to project power across the strait. But the battlefield is not just physical. Increasingly, China is waging a campaign of cognitive warfare, using cyber attacks, disinformation, and economic pressure in an attempt to undermine Taiwan's morale, erode its democratic institutions, and sway public opinion in favor of unification. In recent years, Taiwan has faced relentless waves of fake news stories, sophisticated hacking attempts on its infrastructure, and coordinated efforts to sow discord and confusion among its citizens. This is not the Cold War of spies and submarines. It's the digital age, where the front lines are drawn in bytes and algorithms. Taiwan, for its part, is refusing to stand idle in the face of these growing threats. The government in Taipei has embarked on an ambitious reform of its military, shifting from the traditional model of large, expensive platforms like tanks and fighter jets to a strategy known as asymmetric warfare. What does this mean in practice? Imagine swarms of inexpensive loitering munitions, so-called suicide drones, patrolling the coasts, ready to strike invading forces at a fraction of the cost of conventional weapons. Think of mobile missile batteries hidden in the mountains, advanced radar networks, and a new emphasis on rapid mobility and resilience rather than static defense lines. In the year 2024, Taiwan's latest defense white paper laid out a new doctrine. The battle is not just for territory, but for the hearts and minds of the population. Cognitive warfare became a centerpiece of national strategy, with the government investing heavily in digital literacy campaigns, counter-disinformation units, and public-private partnerships to secure the nation's information space. The goal? To inoculate society against the psychological onslaught from Beijing, ensuring that the population remains informed, resilient, and united in a crisis. At the same time, the United States is stepping up its support. The most recent National Defense Authorization Act, passed by Congress, includes provisions to accelerate the delivery of arms and military technology to Taiwan. This is more than just sending hardware. It's about deepening interoperability between Taiwan's forces and those of the United States, conducting joint training exercises, and sharing intelligence in real time. Japan and Australia, both facing their own regional pressures, are expanding joint patrols and security dialogues, signaling a broader coalition of democracies committed to maintaining peace in the Western Pacific. Meanwhile, the world's semiconductor giants are not waiting for disaster to strike. Taiwan's dominance in advanced chip manufacturing is legendary. More than 90% of the planet's most sophisticated semiconductors are produced on the island, mostly by a single company, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC. Recognizing the existential risk posed by cross-strait tensions, TSMC and other firms are rapidly building backup production lines in the United States, Japan, and Europe. The goal is not just business continuity, but also the creation of a silicon shield, a web of interdependence that makes conflict less appealing for all sides. But here's where the story gets even more complicated, and, frankly, a lot more risky. Beijing is not just modernizing its ballistic missile forces, which now include hundreds of short and medium-range missiles capable of striking every corner of Taiwan. Chinese cyber units are probing Taiwan's power grid, communications infrastructure, and financial systems, searching for vulnerabilities that could be exploited in a crisis. The threat of a naval blockade, cutting Taiwan off from global trade and energy supplies, is a constant shadow over the island's policymakers and business leaders alike. Can Taiwan's embrace of technology and asymmetric tactics really counterbalance China's overwhelming advantage in sheer numbers and resources? Some experts are cautiously optimistic. Others warn that no amount of innovation can fully offset the geographic and demographic realities of the region. Admiral Samuel Paparo, the senior-most U.S. military commander in the Pacific, put it bluntly. China's military buildup is deeply concerning, but we are committed to keeping the Taiwan Strait stable. Yet, behind closed doors, many U.S. and allied strategists worry that deterrence may be growing shakier as China's capabilities surge. Elbridge Colby, a prominent defense thinker, argues, Taiwan must go all in on asymmetry, speed, surprise, and resilience, not just expensive hardware or traditional defense concepts. So, the world is left with a burning question. Is Taiwan's new defense approach a true breakthrough, a model of 21st century deterrence, blending technology, agility, and psychological resilience? Or is it merely a digital Maginot Line, impressive on paper, but ultimately vulnerable to a determined adversary willing to pay any price for victory? Let's peer into the future for a moment, exploring the scenarios that keep U.S. and Asian policymakers awake at night. The first, and perhaps most likely, is the so-called gray zone campaign. In this scenario, Beijing avoids open war, instead intensifying its use of cyber attacks, disinformation, economic blackmail, and non-military coercion. Picture a months-long barrage of hacking attempts on Taiwan's banks and utilities, fake news stories swirling on social media, and targeted sanctions on key Taiwanese industries. By wearing down public morale and sowing confusion, China hopes to weaken Taiwan's resolve from within, accomplishing its goals without firing a single shot. According to Admiral Paparo, these tactics are already being deployed with increasing frequency and sophistication. Taiwanese officials report that, in the past year alone, thousands of cyber intrusions have targeted everything from government databases to hospital networks. Disinformation campaigns, often coordinated through anonymous online accounts, seek to confuse voters, erode trust in democratic institutions, and amplify divisive issues. The goal is to create an atmosphere of uncertainty and fatigue, making it harder for Taiwan to stand united in the face of external pressure. A second, even more dangerous scenario is the possibility of a Chinese blockade. Here, China's Navy and Air Force could encircle the island, effectively choking off the flow of goods, food, energy, and crucially, semiconductors. Remember, more than 90% of the world's most advanced chips are made in Taiwan. A successful blockade would send shockwaves through every major tech sector, from smartphones and electric vehicles to medical equipment and satellites. And In this scenario, global supply chains would grind to a halt, prices would skyrocket, and economies as far away as California and Frankfurt would feel the pain. But the true nightmare scenario, the one that keeps military planners staring at their maps late into the night, is a full-scale invasion. Imagine hundreds of ballistic missiles raining down on Taiwan's airfields and ports, massive cyber attacks disabling critical infrastructure, and waves of amphibious assault ships racing toward the beaches. The human cost would be staggering. Tens or even hundreds of thousands of casualties, a refugee crisis on a scale not seen in Asia since World War II, and the potential for escalation into a wider regional war. Some analysts, such as Oriana Schuyler Mastro, warn that China's leadership may indeed be willing to pay this enormous price to achieve the dream of unification, especially if they believe their window of opportunity is closing. Yet, even as the risks rise, new opportunities and strategies are emerging from the tension. Taiwan, far from being a passive target, is taking bold steps to defend itself and adapt to the changing threat environment. The island has invested heavily in developing advanced loitering munitions, highly maneuverable drones capable of striking ships or armored vehicles at a moment's notice. The Coast Guard, traditionally focused on law enforcement, is now conducting joint exercises with regional partners like Japan and the Philippines to boost maritime domain awareness and sharpen its ability to respond to gray zone provocations. Recognizing the vulnerability of its semiconductor industry, Taiwanese companies are expanding production capacity in friendly countries. TSMC has announced major new plants in the United States and Japan, a move designed to reduce risk and entrench Taiwan's role as an indispensable node in the global tech ecosystem. This diversification is not just about economics. It's a strategic buffer against coercion and conflict. Countries across the Indo-Pacific are responding too. Japan has moved to reinterpret its pacifist constitution, allowing for greater military cooperation with allies and even preemptive defense measures. Australia is deepening its intelligence-sharing ties and participating in trilateral exercises with the United States and Japan, preparing for a range of contingencies. The United States, meanwhile, is deploying more advanced missile defense systems to Guam and other key locations, pre-positioning equipment in friendly countries, and conducting frequent freedom of navigation operations in the Taiwan Strait. The message is clear. Deterrence is a team sport, and the fate of Taiwan affects the entire democratic world. But what does all of this mean for you? Whether you're watching from a bustling city in Europe, a quiet suburb in North America, or the vibrant streets of Southeast Asia. Quite simply, the outcome of the Taiwan crisis will shape the future of technology, economics, and even the daily conveniences you rely on. If conflict disrupts chip production in Taiwan, you could see shortages of smartphones, laptops, electric vehicles, and even the medical devices that keep hospitals running. Prices could soar, innovation could stall, and the global economy could slip into recession. Beyond the material impact, Taiwan's struggle is a powerful lesson in resilience, adaptability, and the importance of innovation. The island's pivot to asymmetric defense isn't just a military story. It's a case study for businesses, governments, and individuals everywhere. In an era where size and brute force are no longer the only determinants of success, Taiwan's strategy reminds us that nimbleness, creativity, and the smart use of technology can level the playing field. Whether you're running a startup, leading a community, or navigating your own challenges, the principle is the same. Adapt quickly, leverage your unique strengths, and never underestimate the power of strategy over raw numbers. Of course, no defense is perfect. The risks facing Taiwan are enormous, and the margin for error is slim. As Richard Haas of the Council on Foreign Relations put it, deterrence is about making the costs of aggression clearly unacceptable. Taiwan's new approach, especially when backed by allies, might just be enough to make Beijing pause, or at least reconsider the timeline for action. Still, the uncertainty is real, and the stakes could not be higher. Here's a little-known secret. The opening moves of any future conflict over Taiwan are likely to take place in cyberspace, not on the beaches. The first shots would be lines of malicious code, targeting power plants, communications hubs, transportation networks, and the flow of information itself. The goal would be to sow chaos, paralyze decision-making, and undermine the public's will to resist. In this new kind of warfare, security isn't just about soldiers or ships. It's about protecting the invisible threads that connect our economies, societies, and even our sense of truth. What lessons can the world draw from Taiwan's experience? First, the need for digital resilience has never been greater. Governments, businesses, and individuals alike must invest in cybersecurity, media literacy, and robust contingency planning. Second, alliances matter. No nation, no matter how technologically advanced, can stand alone against the combined weight of economic and military coercion. Third, the value of democracy, transparency, and open societies must be defended, not just with weapons, but with information, dialogue, and civic engagement. Looking ahead, the choices made in Taipei, Washington, Beijing, and capitals around the world will reverberate for decades. Will Taiwan's innovative defense strategies buy time for a lasting peace, or simply delay the inevitable showdown? Will the world's tech giants succeed in building a more resilient supply chain, or will a single spark ignite a crisis that cascades across continents? And most importantly, what role will ordinary citizens play in shaping the outcome through their votes, their voices, and their vigilance? In the end, the story of Taiwan is the story of our interconnected age. A world where the fates of nations, technologies, and individuals are woven together more tightly than ever before. As the high-stakes chess match in the Taiwan Strait continues, one thing is certain. The lessons learned here will shape not just the future of Asia, but the future of freedom, innovation, and resilience everywhere. If you found this deep dive eye-opening, don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell for future updates. What do you think is the most important lesson from Taiwan's struggle? Can asymmetric strategies really keep a giant at bay? Or is a new era of tech-driven power politics already upon us? Share your thoughts below. Your perspective matters more than ever. And together, by staying informed,